I would like to introduce a woman that I'm greatly in awe of, and I feel very privileged to call a new friend. Mrs. Mona Lee Locke is the wife of Ambassador Gary Locke and the mother of 3 children, Emily, Dylan, and Madeline. Mr. and Mrs. Locke have been married for almost 18 years. Yes. However, she's not your typical mother and wife, and if you didn't already know that, you're going to find out tonight. Mona Lee Locke graduated from the Harvard Business Executive Education Program. She earned her Master of Science in Journalism from Northwestern University and her Bachelor's of Arts in English from UC Berkeley. At Berkeley, she not only studied English, she also wrote for the campus paper. She also anchored and produced a radio show, sang in musicals and performed. And yes, she was also a cheerleader.
Okay, you did a lot of research. I don't know where you found
And
all that.
since then, she has won numerous accolades as a TV journalist, including an Emmy nomination. And Mrs. Locke is even a former Miss Asian America. In addition, she's also an accomplished nonprofit leader and has led several prominent NGOs championing important women's and children's issues. In 1999, as the First Lady of Washington State, she led a delegation of 60 American educators to China to meet with their counterparts and exchange knowledge on early childhood learning. And afterwards, she produced and narrated a documentary called Precious Children on the children that she met in China, which has aired nationally on PBS. And today she continues to utilize her experience and talents to promote U.S.-China cross-cultural understanding, hosting a new show called U.S.-China Focus, produced by the U.S. Embassy. So when I first met her, I was so impressed and totally struck by her grace and intelligence and warmth. And today we have the great honor of speaking to her about her China journey. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mrs. Mona Lee Locke.
That was very sweet. Can I just want to thank Holly and Project Pengyou and everyone that helped put this event together, because it seems funny to come here and talk about me when I think there's so many bigger issues facing this country, America, and our relationship. And so I just really do, as Secretary Clinton says, it takes a village. And truly, I believe after meeting Holly and all of you here who have invested in Project Pengyou, who support Project Pengyou, you really are the village that is going to help build those bridges in the future. So thank you for your support of them and the 100,000 Strong and the initiatives of the embassy.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to start with, well, recently I hear that you've become somewhat of a fashion icon. You've been, have you guys heard about this recently? She's been in Marie Claire magazine and Elle magazine and an upcoming Vogue magazine. Yeah. Is that right? Yeah. So how did you get roped into
I have no idea.
the fashion spotlight?
Contrary to the title she talked about and all the cheerleading and all, I have not really been that focused on fashion. So it was.
But she looks good, right?
Thank you. It was surprising for me to be asked, and really quite an honor, I think, to be interviewed by these magazines. And I don't really know how it came about, but I said yes because I thought it was an opportunity to connect with the culture in a different way that the embassy might normally connect. And for me, what I have found since coming here last August with my husband and family is there's this immense sense of curiosity about our family, about the ambassador. I think there was a lot of publicity about him with the Starbucks photo before we arrived. And so I was surprised, though, when the first question, I think the first magazine was Elle, and the very first question the reporter asked was, so you're a role model for a lot of young, professional Asian American women out there, Chinese American women. Can you tell me, how do they find the perfect husband? And I thought, wow, don't look. But it was truly, I think, an interesting, illustration of the difference in cultures in many ways, but yet also the commonality of the issues that women face today and the younger generation, especially women, in terms of how do you get married and have a family, yet have your independence and balance it all. So I have said yes to these magazines because I think, as I said, it's a great way to reach a different sector, and especially young women out there.
So this isn't your first time to China, obviously.
It's my first time living in China, but I've been here, I think we first came back when he was elected governor back in 1997.
Okay.
And so we've been back many times. And my parents had since retired. I was born and raised in California. And my parents retired, and they actually came back for the first time when my husband and I went on this journey. And I called them and said, you should come back. They had not been back since they left.
Which part of China?
Well, we went to Shanghai. My father's from Shanghai. My mother's from Hubei. And so it was their first time back. And then one night after the funny thing was I was a journalist. And so we were traveling with all the media, and they were all my friends. And so one night after the delegation, we finished our meetings, we finished the dinner, I said, let's go find your house, Dad. Let's go find it. And he knew nothing about it. He was a young child, about 12 years old when he left. And he said, well, I know it's in the French Quarter. So we hijacked the little minibus that took all the journalists. And of course, I told all my friends, hey, come on, we're going to go look for him at Dad's house. So all the journalists packed into the little minibus with us. And we drove around the French Quarter, and my father was able to find the house. And he said, there's the Lion door knockers. And he came from a very privileged family at the time. I think he had 3 nannies and, lived a very good life. And so then we got out, and I said, you've got to knock on the door. We've got to know who's living there. And so he got out, but it was almost like he never talked about his background. He never talked about his past life. And it was almost like we weren't even there. This whole bus of media wasn't there. And he went to the front door, and he looked at it, and he looked up at the window, and he said, there's a window. That was where my room was. And then he pointed across the street, and he said, that's where I saw the man being stabbed to death. And we had never heard the story, he had never discussed it, but I believe at that time it was an anti-communist sympathizer way back. And so these are all events that shaped his life that we, the kids, never had heard of. And so that was his first journey back. And so we knocked on the door, and the people that lived there opened it, and there were 8 families now living, and it was beautiful, like parquet wood floors, and it was still so beautiful, but they had just put partitions up within the house. It was 3 stories high, and so it was quite an experience. So that was the first time back in '97, and then probably 10 years later, my parents came up one day to Seattle, Washington, where we lived, and said, Dad and I were retired, and we're moving back to China. So we were quite shocked, but now my parents are actually living in China.
Oh,
so
in
moving
Shanghai?
here in Shanghai, and now they're in Zhuhai. They
Wow.
travel around a lot. But so moving here as a family, was not just a blessing because I thought my kids could really learn about the Chinese culture and connect back to that culture, but also because we're closer to the grandparents.
Wow.
So.